On this bonus edition, Locked On Bucks, I am joined by Brandon Scott, the host of Locked On Wizards, to get an inside perspective on Kyle Kuzma and what can the Bucks expect from him in Milwaukee. We'll talk about that right after this intro.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What it do, y'all? Welcome to Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, and as mentioned, I am joined by Brandon Scott from Locked On Wizards, and we appreciate you for tuning in and, making Locked On Bucks, Locked On Wizards, whatever it might be, your first listen of the day. And Brandon, I don't want to waste your time. I'm thankful for your time here, and I just got to get your perspective on Kyle Kuzma because this is a trade for Bucks fans that, while not necessarily surprising to see Chris Middleton head out the door, I think a lot of people were surprised initially to see Kyle Kuzma walking back into that door. So the first question that I have for you is, ideally, what position does Kuz play? Is he a 3? Is he a 4? Does he have the skill set to slide between the two spots? Like, where ideally does he fit in the lineup?
Oh, I mean, he's very versatile. So he can play small forward, he can play power forward, he can play small ball center. He's played that for us in an event of injury in the past. So he's a very versatile player. 6'9", 6'10".
Okay.
Like I said, he can play all three positions. So, it really depends on what your expectations are for him. For us, power forward was his best position. But then at times I thought that this year he was going to slide more into small forward and be more productive. So, I think he can definitely eat whether it's at the 3 or the 4.
Okay. And with that, the shooting, that's a concern that I have for Kuzma myself here, because looking at the numbers, this year has been just a down year for him. I know he had the injury, not sure how much that's played into the numbers or just the role that he has on this team with so many different young players coming through that door and trying to allocate more time for them. But the numbers haven't been great. 28% from 3 this year, a 33 career 3-point shooter. Like, what's going on with the shooting with Kuz?
I'm gonna say it's volume. Obviously, he in DC he's been the number one scoring option. Then with Jordan Poole in the fold, it's kind of the 1-2 punch as far as offensive responsibility. But it's volume. They gave him the green light, and with volume, when you look at aggressive players, usually aggressive play usually comes at the expense of inefficiency, and it really shows with Kuz. Where in DC we expected him to be kind of that guy to help other guys like Bilal Coulibaly and Alex Sarr get going, but he's just not that guy. He's a volume scorer. So, when you look at his fit in Milwaukee, I think he fits in Milwaukee better than Washington because, again, with that green light in Washington, he kind of goes out there and he never met a shot he didn't like. You know what I mean? So in Milwaukee, you got Giannis who's going to take a majority of the load offensively. You got Dame Lillard, so he can be able to just come in there and do his thing, not really shoulder most of the offensive load. So I think it's a good situation for him because, like I said, in DC, he was the guy, and inefficiency was a big issue with Kyle Kuzma, and it really had an effect on the team overall because we're in the second year of a rebuild, so we need to kind of showcase the vets, but still try to develop these young guys. And Kyle Kuzma, when I talked to him at Media Day this year, I was like, what part of the game do you want to kind of fix? And he said, look, I have to get other people involved, and it was really wishful thinking because with his play style, it's hard to really be that aggressive scorer and still try to develop the young guys at the same time. So.
Do you think that he has a good feel for playmaking? Now, I'm not trying for Bucks fans who are listening. They know Chris Middleton going out the door leaves a gap in playmaking for this team. That is something that Chris has excelled in. And you mentioned just him trying to find that right balance in Washington. But do you think with him in a different role here, he mentioned he was trying to work on that aspect of his game. Do you think that playmaking might be a surprising bonus that we get for him? Maybe not to the level of Chris Middleton. Honestly, probably not to the level of Chris Middleton. But do you think that he has the vision and just the ability to kind of help move that ball along, keep the offense flowing?
I think he can, as long as he really buys into what his role is. Because, like I said, being the number one guy in DC, distribution got better, but not quite where I needed it to be. But in Milwaukee, like I said, no pressure being that guy. You got Giannis; he's going to be the focal point of most defenses, and then you have Dame Lillard. So, I mean, Kuz can kind of go out and do his thing, and he can utilize the size of 6'9", 6'10". I mean, to get into the attack the basket, get to the free throw line, and collapse the defense and utilize outside shooters. So if you have a team that's really has the ability to have outside shooters to be utilized, that's where he best fits. To be able to collapse the defense and really utilize guys on the outside.
Okay. So some hope there, a little hope I would say on that front with Kuz. Now I got a question about his defense before I go to that side of the ball. Just a straight up question for you as somebody who's been watching Kuz in Washington. Your reaction when you saw that he was heading out of the door. Normally you can gather a lot from a player based on how the fan base that's seeing him head out, how they feel about that. So like when you got the news like Kuz is out the door, what was your reaction to
I think I jumped up and cheered, man. Because
it?
I mean, I mean, let me say this. Kyle Kuzma, when he came over in the Russell Westbrook trade, very productive player here in DC. You know, he was a guy who was a big leader in the locker room. You know, last couple of years, you could argue that, yeah, team performance was poor, but he played at all-star level. He's a guy who came in, produced, didn't get in trouble, but he did burn bridges on the way out. He's a guy very vocal on X. I was a good, you know, I said it for the last couple of years, maybe he needs to get a publicist or somebody because, you know, he kind of got himself in trouble with, you know, going back and forth with people and, you know, making certain comments like, you know, Detroit saying, don't be that team. And then we ended up being that team.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he drops 30 points this year. And then the first thing he says in the interview is, well, I'm gonna get mine. I don't, you know, I ain't really trying to develop nobody else. So, you know, that kind of burned a lot of bridges in DC. But I mean, as far as his legacy, because you know, a couple people ask me what his legacy is. I mean, he doesn't really have a legacy because when you really look in hindsight of players that are, you know, kind of iconic in DC, you know, Gilbert Arenas, John Wall, even the Ney or even Antoine Jameson, he doesn't really fit that mold. He's a guy where he was productive here, but honestly, he's not going to be remembered like the you know, a lot of the other Wizards greats. So, I mean, you know, he's a good guy. He's productive, but it really depends on if he buys in what you guys are doing. Like you guys are a playoff team, so he's definitely going to buy in at that, as opposed to the team which is in year 2 of a rebuild. So, he's a high character guy. I mean, yeah, he burned bridges on the way out, but he's a guy who, you know, and I said this, and I have people laugh when I say this, but he's a good guy that was intent on being a bad guy in DC on the way out. And he's a good guy. You know, he's kind of, you know, he's good with the media, you know, so you're getting the good guy just if he buys in. And I think he's definitely going to buy in Milwaukee. So
That's the hope. That's the hope. And I want to talk a bit more about what the hope is for him in Milwaukee as well as his defense. And just get a quick question on Pat Baldwin Jr., who was throwing the trade. He has some local ties here to the Southeast Wisconsin area, but got some questions about how the NBA career has gone for him. So we'll talk a little bit more about that after this. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3% plus. You also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on the annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk, rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Looking for tickets for your next big event? Whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or sports game, like maybe you want to see that Kuz debut in Milwaukee or the Middleton debut in DC, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. So let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all of the hard work for you. It curates the best deal so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Game Time Picks for a while. It came in clutch for me when I was on vacation in Phoenix while the WNBA All-Star game was going on. Got to attend that event and get good pricing. Seeing the all-in ticket price is one of my favorite things about Game Time. And even better than that, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. So if you find a better deal somewhere else, they will refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something does come out. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Okay, here with Brandon from Locked On Wizards, getting all my Kuz questions answered. Now, the defense and the hope of him in Milwaukee. I think the hope of Kyle Kuzma is that, playing with Giannis and Dame creates better looks at the rim for him, so he's able to knock down shots at a higher clip. The hope is that he comes in and plays some really hard-nosed defense, that he helps to open up Giannis at the 5 lineups with him being that small, that 4 next to him, rebounding, a critical piece of it all, doing the dirty work. And I just wanted to ask you, from what you've seen in Washington, and I can understand that at times if you're playing for a team that doesn't have the playoff aspirations, it can look different. But does he have the defensive tool set to fulfill that role in Milwaukee?
Well, he has the skill set to do so, absolutely. But the biggest thing, like you already mentioned, is he motivated? He has to buy in, and when he's motivated, yeah, he's locked in. When he's not, then he can be kind of unplayable at times defensively. And like I said, he has to buy in. He has to be motivated, and I believe that if he's in an environment where he has stars that are already established, you can kind of push him and kind of check him. And when you have a coach in Doc Rivers is going to do the same, that you're going to get more of an output than you would in DC, because we have a coach that is a first-time head coach, so he doesn't have a lot of clout in the NBA. So what are you really going to tell a lot of these vets, man, when you're a first-time head coach? You know what I mean? And so, and you really don't have any other stars who are really going to say, hey, man, you need to get it together, or you're going to be on the bench. I mean, Jordan Poole ain't going to check nobody, because, really, if you look at between Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma's the OG, so you can't really say too much. You know what I mean? So I think it's a good environment. You're going to get a lot out of him, not only offensively, but defensively, because you have all those factors come in. You have the established stars who are going to check him. You have a coach in Doc Rivers who is going to hold him accountable, who's going to hold him to a standard. So as far as in DC, it was up and down. I mean, it really depended on the year. The last couple of years, very motivated. This year, not so much. But like I said, you guys have all the right pieces in the right places for him to be successful.
I appreciate your time here to have just like this little quick bonus episode to get a insider's perspective on Kyle Kuzma's game and some heads up on what to expect from Patrick Baldwin as well. I will say we're also doing this the flip side, on the Wizard side, with Brandon being able to ask me whatever questions that he has about Chris Middleton coming, AJ Johnson. So make sure you guys also head over to Locked On Wizards and check out that conversation as well. Brandon, thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
Oh, anytime. You already know.